going to move on to our first panel. And with that panel, firstly, our first representative coming from Zimbabwe, Zambezi Valley, is Nyaradzo Hoto. She is surgeon at the Akashinga program, and that's a program created by, correct me if I'm wrong, but established by International Anti-Poaching Foundation, sorry. And what we would like to then do with Nyaradzo is to hear her insights from Zimbabwe and start by firstly hearing what is the ranger story behind Nyaradzo becoming a ranger, and how long have you been a ranger, and what actually inspired you to become one. So Nyaradzo, I hope you're there. You can switch on your camera and hopefully the audio works. I can see you and I think I can hear you as well. So fantastically, welcome, and over to you. Briefly to introduce yourself and also tell your story, what inspired you to become a ranger.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nyaradzo Hoto. I'm a female ranger here for Akashinga program under IAPF, like what Maria had mentioned before, that has been formed by International Anti-Poaching Foundation. And this program was formed in 2017. So right now I'm 29 years and I've been working as a ranger since 2017 up to now. And right now I'm working as a sergeant for the Akashinga Rangers, and I'm very proud to be at that lead. The passion on wildlife and nature have attracted me to this job, definitely. And
Nyaradzo, I think you...
A ranger.
We can hear you now. There was a moment when you were muted again, but now we can hear you. So we heard, last thing we heard was the passion of the wildlife. So you can continue from there.
Okay, I was just trying to say the passion on wildlife and nature really attracted me to this job by the time when it was introduced in our community, so that the women will have the opportunity to conserve the nature. So this passion and love attracted me to become one of the Akashinga Rangers, like what I am today.
Thank you. And building on that, could you tell us a little bit more about the Akashinga program? So what does it do? What's your role in it? And actually also, how many women do you have now on board in the program?
Apparently, Akashinga is the community-based is a community-based conservation model that empowers local communities to protect areas that are held under communal land. And through IAPF, through Akashinga program, empowers women from these local communities to protect these areas. And I'm one of the largest source of local employment as I'm speaking right now. And I, through Akashinga program, has employed 100% women rangers and women scouts right now. And Akashinga program is doing a lot. Like, for example, in Binga, we are meeting the 16th of the SDGs right now. We have got 120 children that are under scholarship programs. And not only to that educational side, we are drilling boreholes for the supply of water, maintaining the roads, renovating the clinics for the health of the community areas. And I believe that Akashinga program will meet the 17th SDGs by 2022 when we expand to ocean and marine conservation. Right now, we are on the 16th of the SDGs, but I think by 22, the 17 SDGs will be realized in Akashinga.
Fantastic. So that's already quite a lot of SDGs covered by rangers and by by the program. How many people, how many women do you have in the program now?
right now we here at Akashinga Gomo, we have got 20 rangers that have been fully trained.
Yep.
Then we have almost 50 rangers that are under training. And also in Binga, there are more 20 rangers again that are under training, women rangers, not male rangers.
Yeah.
And those rangers traditionally, I think it helps to the community because the women from the concept, from the model, they spend 3 times more of their salaries from the local community. So the model, the program now, what it does, it's now turning the fund spending on conservation salaries into the most effective community development funding.
So thinking that through, what you're saying is kind of, it sounds like it is a virtuous circle in terms of delivering SDGs, because you as rangers, you help the communities and help these areas to work for them, and then it also gives back in terms of salaries to support the well-being of the rangers. So to me, it really sounds like a program that has gotten it right, and hopefully therefore also has some potential to be replicated elsewhere as well. Obviously everywhere is different, but it seems like you've gotten it right in Zimbabwe, so that could be a model, perhaps some other areas in the future to work in a similar way. So that sounds fantastic. You already said that you...
Yes. And sorry.
Yeah, see, please continue.
Sorry, if I can add something,
yeah,
like Akashinga, it achieves its objective through preserving conservation by shifting the objectives, the strategy on wildlife conservation. Akashinga program is putting the women empowerment at the center of that strategy and bringing out the greatest attraction on community development. And conservation now, it is becoming the outcome of the model.
Yeah. So it's one of the things we highlighted in our guidance was how project areas through these types of governance mechanisms, support mechanisms, and rangers can also support the gender equality and also equity of communities more. And I think, Akashinga sounds like precisely an example of that, where you also, as you said yourself, by empowering women, the conservation and well done right can actually do that. And then, you've been able to become part of those linchpins as rangers to support that in the community. Question for the future. This event is also very much about highlighting the support that the rangers working on the field need to do this better and to snowball these types of good experiences. So what kind of support would you and your colleagues at the Akashinga program appreciate in the future? For example, in the pandemic context now that we're living in, that you'd be able to continue to do your work, expand your SDGs, the 17 SDGs, and also perhaps recruit even more people and expand, to Zimbabwe and beyond. So what would you need? What would you appreciate as a community support from the international community?
Right now, as I can say, pandemic has brought the world to stand still, and it has costed us $1 trillion. Sorry, it has costed us $1 trillion. And I think we have to understand the importance of nature and the role it plays as the greatest self-regulatory system. And it's something that for our own well-being, we have to preserve. As rangers on the first front line of defense for the nature.
Thank you. And would you then, for example, so we will be having a second panel, some of the, you could call them funders, the programs that are supporting rangers around the world, really. Would you have one message or key wish for them in the future in terms of the programs they would be funding, based on your experience? Like, for example, the key message being, make sure that in every program, conservation program you have on the ground, there is a dedicated element that supports ranger, for example, ranger capacity building or something similar. Would that be something that you would put forward as a message to the funders and the international community?
Yeah, like right now, as we are living in the pandemic, we have to all put in mind that rangers are on the front line of protecting and preserving the nature. So we have to put all our hearts and minds on them so that they will keep on protecting the nature, so that we'll never neglect the nature.
Super. Thank you, Nyaradzo. I will move on to the next panelist. But before that, just a heartwarm welcome, heartwarm thank you to you for being able to take some part of your very important work to join us today, and hope you can listen in. And also, if you have any comments or thoughts while you're listening to the other panelists and other fellow rangers, feel free to chat away in a chat, and we can then also keep the continue a little bit of the conversation beyond what we can see on screen as well. So thanks for that. Thank you for all your insights. And we leave Zimbabwe and we move to Georgia. So from Africa to the European continent. And next, a range of representatives. Thank you. Next range of representatives of our panel is Luso Dostibegian. I hope I got that relatively right. And Luso is a ranger from Georgia, and she comes from the Agency of Protected Areas of Georgia. So welcome, Luso. Great that you could join us today.
Welcome. Thank you for giving this possibility to participate in this meeting. And my name is Luso Dostibegian. I am 26 years old. I'm from Algeti National Park. I'm a ranger, and I have been working in this position 2 years, 10 months, and 25 days.
To be precise.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And similar question that I asked of Nyaradzo, what inspired you to become a ranger?
What about my inspiration to become a ranger? In 2012, when I was studying at school, I read a story about first female ranger in Georgia, which is Salome Doidze, and she worked in Tusheti National Park, and she really inspired me, and I decided to become a ranger. And after 6 years, I sent my CV in Protected Areas Agency, and in 2018 I will start working in Algeti National Park. And really, I love nature and our world, and I see myself as a protector. And this is my inspiration to become a ranger.
That sounds fantastic. What about, based on your experience and bringing you to the discussion of today and this event, can rangers help to ensure, like when working on protected areas, that also those wider sustainability goals, for example, towards local communities, are established or they come to be? And if so, how? Do you have, like, for example, experience from your own working life, where while working for the nature, you've also actually worked for and also managed to work for the people and the local communities around?
Yeah, I protect around 184 hectares. I work in Samshulde Canyon. It's a natural monument, and near this canyon we have a small village, Samshulde, and we as rangers and we need every time we need work with local community and Algeti National Park administration and rangers. We organize some eco-education lessons and for school children, and we make some meetings for local people to inform them about the importance of this biodiversity and rules, what we need to know about protected areas and some possibilities of development in these protected areas. And we think what involvement of the local communities and local people, it's very important for protection of nature together. And I think it's besides on my experience, we as rangers can to ensure when protected areas support local communities.
Precisely. Making sure that local communities also benefit, and because of that also that local communities are supportive of the actions that need to be taken place for biodiversity. And also, I guess, when you have a well-managed protected area, then also others outside the region will be benefiting. I'd imagine that, you know, for example, in your case, you obviously also have quite some visitors and tourism coming to the project areas, and, you know, hoping that will be also, how to say, in harmony with also the local communities and mutually supportive of you know, both the locals and the visitors alike.
Yeah, and for example, also when people who live near protected areas and near national parks, we help us for cleaning and firefighting activities also, and it's really important to show people what we are live near protected areas and how we can also use this. Maybe, for example, also for tourists, yeah, make some services or do something good for families also.
Yeah, precisely. And then, based on your experience and also how the situation might be at the moment more broadly in Georgia, what kind of support would you and colleagues appreciate in the future? Where do you see that the path should take us? You know, where do you think that? How do you think that, you know, we can improve the role of rangers in Georgia to provide even better support to nature and local communities?
I think sharing experience about the rangers and successful stories from different countries and getting some knowledge to deal with challenges are the topic what we, maybe me and my colleague, appreciate for future. It's more important for us now.
Yeah, so I guess we're talking about ideally similar event to this, but taking place live somewhere where the conversation can be slightly more fluid and better than we can ever do online. But precisely these types of, you know, opportunities to be able to link rangers together, and perhaps as well, you know, I don't know how you think and feel about it, but in addition to creating this peer network between rangers, perhaps also having conversations with people who support the policy and decision making, like myself, you know, in different countries, to be able to ensure that somehow together we'll get the rangers' voices represented in also the policy frameworks and documents that, you know, support, for example, you know, how funding in countries is channeled to different public goods and activities as well.
Yeah, it's very important, really.
Fantastic. Luso, thank you so much also taking time to be here with us today from your busy schedule, and sharing your views and thoughts and ideas. So with that, thank you. Stay online. Chat away in the chat if you wish to as well, and share experiences while we move on to the next representative of rangers around the world, and that would be Florin Halastauan. Again, I do apologize everybody for butchering their last or first names, but you know, my intentions are sincere. Florin is a ranger leader in the Bison Reintroduction project in southwestern Carpathians, and for those who might wonder where the Carpathians are, they're in Romania. I think, you know, the southwestern ones, certainly.
Part of Carpathians.
Part of them, yeah. And then, but Florin is also former vice president of the International Federation of Rangers, and also their representative of European Rangers, I think at the moment. So I hope we got it relatively right as to what your affiliation is, Florin, but safe to say, point here is Florin has worked with and represented and is a ranger with lots of experience. So with that, I guess my question to you as to others is, what's your story? How did you become a ranger and working with rangers, and what inspired you?
Yeah, first of all, say hello to everybody, and I'm very happy to be here and explain a little bit about rangers and ranger jobs in Europe, especially in Europe. It's my colleague explain you for other parts of the world, but yeah, my story in the ranger job, it's coming in very old, yeah, in time. It's 25 years ago since I started to take a part of the rescue team in my area. It's a Carpathian Mountains in the oldest national park in Romania, Bretiza National Park. And I was one of the first ranger full-time employed in Romania in 2004. And since there, I started to have very, very close contact with the international rangers activity and connection with different other. Yeah, what inspired me to be a ranger was nature. So I was start as a children playing ground in the forest, walking in the forest, and looking after the animals, wild animals, and so on. And during the time, I was meeting very different people who makes me understand the natures, local people in my community. And also when I start working as a ranger, I have a good, lucky, let's see, a good director of the national park who helped me to have opportunity and take contact with international rangers, because in Romania, ranger job is very young. It's only 20 years, which is in comparison with the US and other old national park in the world, it's 100 years ago. So for us, it's just a pioneer jobs. We are now in transition as the rangers in Romania. We start to learn a lot in the last 20 years since we are rangers in Romania. Now we have trained 200 to 300 rangers in all Romania National Natural Park. So this is the small history about my ranger activity in Romania. So yeah, what inspired me is the natures and loving the nature. That is not coming overnight. So you don't wake up in the morning and say, yeah, I like to be a ranger and I like to protect the nature. It's coming in time and inspire people. People inspire you. Yeah. And if you are lucky to understand, you get inspired for others. So this is the ranger jobs all over the world. So yeah, good rangers, it's an inspiration for the kids, for the people, for his community. So this is the main point of the ranger job.
Thanks, Florin. I've noted down inspiration because I think certainly that's the way it is. I've often said that to me, and I think quite many visitors to both areas, we see rangers as the sort of superheroes for nature in many ways, and I guess that's also
we are simple ones. We are simple people. We just love
simple superheroes, but regardless of that, superheroes and inspiration, I think. Based on your experience, then, how have you seen or experienced the role of rangers in supporting the wider sustainable development for local communities, but perhaps also giving your international European role, also more broadly delivering these different types of helping to deliver these different types of benefits that both areas bring, for water conservation, for mental and physical well-being and different things. So have you seen that in your work in Romania? And how is that going at the moment? Are things developing the right direction?
I think I will look on the bigger pictures, not on the. If you talk about needs about rangers and European rangers, and also around the world, the needs for us, I think we need to get connection in the ranger job and the political decision in Europe. Everybody talks in Europe now, and it's a big parliament, European Commission, about deal green and other things. I think without every ranger in his jobs, these all green deals, all these projects regarding environment protection and protected natural area will be not possible. I think every ranger in his job take a part of the big picture, the political level doing. So I think in this moment, I like to have the European Commission director, I don't know who is it, coming with me in every place in Europe, in the small protected area or a big national park, to understand what's mean these projects put in the practice in the lower level as the ranger level. Because with our rangers, we can't do anything. With our protected area rangers, they don't do anything. We make monitoring, we make law enforcement, we make education, we make inspiration, community connection with the project. So without us, everyone doing anything is not put in practice. So this is the big issues in this moment. Every meeting we have in European level as a rangers and international level, Sean will talk about this. He was the former IAPF president. We have this problem. They don't link it with the end of the project, with the basic level of the project. So I would like to go in the European Parliament with some of my colleagues, rangers, explain and talk as an open chat with them to understand what's being put in the practice, the local projects. So I think rangers it's a chain. We are part of the chain. And if they don't talk with us to understand our needs, global, European, and global needs of our rangers. For what Mike Carpathians will talk next about it. So it's a big, important chain, and we are part of the chain. They need to ask us and talk with us. So I think this is one of the big issue for the future for the rangers. I could speak about equipment, I could speak about legislation, rangers, protecting rangers. So I don't know how much understand. People, rangers are developed jobs in the field. Most of the European rangers, they don't have insurance. They work in the field without life insurance. Most of the rangers, they don't have basic needs in Europe. We talk about Europe, the best Europe, the best place in the world. But people who protect nature in Europe, they have the lowest equipment, lowest laws protect them, and many other things nobody put in them in the discussion. So this is a big problem and a big issue for developing the future.
Fantastic, thanks, Florin. And how do I say? We've now heard, before you and also from Abby, we heard the needs which are really on daily needs in terms of, the equipment and capacity, and you sort of, linking that to the policy making, in this case at the European level, and sort of highlighting that ideally what we would have is a delegation to the European Parliament to kind of have this conversation and explain it even more detailedly as to, well, this is how you implement the Green Deal. And for those globally who don't know what we're talking about with the Green Deal is, so the European Commission, so the European project, European countries together have, for the upcoming policy period, decided, thankfully, that the future should be green, and we have the Green Deal, which should be delivering sustainable development for across the Europe. And in that, there are a number of initiatives, including those where we think that we should use nature-based solutions to build back better. And what Florin is saying, that in order to build back better, I think that's what you're saying, we also need to understand who are those who help to build back better, and rangers are one of those groups of people. And I think that information is indeed perhaps missing when people do talk about this in a more theoretical context in the policy circles as well. I know this because I'm partly party to those as well. Thanks, Florin. That was fantastic. And also kind of, we've been, brought us to the policy level as well, which is a bit more obviously perhaps abstract from a daily basis, but that's also where the support frameworks are created. And I'm grateful to hear that you're doing important work to highlight this in the European context through your work at the Ranger Federation as well. So thank you for that. Any further parting thoughts for the future from you before we move on to the next panelist?
So I think my colleagues around Europe and also around the world, I have a lot of contact and a lot of discussion in Fingering Line, and also now in International Ranger Federation develop a code of conduct for rangers, which means what they need to do in their jobs, but what they need to do for doing their jobs better. So this code of conduct will be soon open, will be put on the table for the political level to follow them and show them what they need, what we need as a rangers, and what they need to do for us as a rangers. Because without rangers, without protecting natures, they can't do anything. Will be no finish anything without us. So yeah, this is a big issue for the future, and I think we are in the right place to discuss this. And who wants to ask or who wants to listen and understand what we need, it's a moment to understand and try to put us on the table.
Yeah. I do agree, given where the Green Deal is now, and also where the Sustainable Development Goals are more broadly as well, and also where the biodiversity future framework is, and the decisions being made on the 2030 horizon now. Thanks, Florin. Fantastic that you could join us. Again, stay tuned, and let's see whether we can at least, together wave goodbye to the audience and the listeners at the end of it. But from Romania, from Europe, we move on to our next panelist. And our next panelist comes from the Democratic Republic of Congo, Claudel Tshibangu. And he is planning and monitoring and GIS analyst working for the Forgotten Parks Foundation and working at the Upemba National Park in DR Congo. Welcome, Claudel.
Thank you, Marion.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
As everybody else, I'm also going to ask you, so what is your ranger or ranger related story? How long have you been working with rangers, and also what inspired you to sort of, work in that space, and what inspires you to continue to work in that space?
Hi, Marion, and hi, everyone. I would say that the first time I visited one of our national park named Kahuzi-Biega in Eastern DRC, that's when I got inspired to see the hard work rangers were doing to protect gorillas, mountain gorillas. But I noticed that there was a lack of knowledge, and mainly in terms of GIS. And then from that time, I decided to throw away the other job I was doing and then go back to school and learn more GIS. And since that time, I started working for national parks and support all the work that rangers are doing.
Fantastic. And how long have you been doing that?
I've been working for national parks since 2010. So
that's over a decade of having thrown away your previous work and supporting the important work of rangers. Fantastic. So working with the rangers on the ground, what are the key challenges that rangers are facing managing project areas and conserved areas in DR Congo at the moment?
Yeah, thanks for asking. As Florin said previously, that without rangers, even governments or the whole world can't reach anything in terms of SDGs. Working along the rangers, I've seen that they face a lot of challenges, but I'm going to highlight the main ones here, and the ones that rangers face mainly in my protected area, which is Upemba National Park. They are facing militia group who are heavily armed than our rangers, which makes their job really difficult to patrol the area where they are best. They also face bushfire, which is mainly managed by poachers who use bushfire to prevent rangers to reach also the areas where they are protecting our main species like zebras, elephants, and hippos. Rangers miss also some equipment, mainly in terms of spatial data collection, like enough GPS, cyber tracker. They don't have enough capacity building, and the salary as well is really, really low. And the lack of knowledge of how to deal with human and elephant conflicts is something that our rangers are facing, and mainly in Upemba National Park, because we have problems every year, and our rangers, they do what they can to protect, on one hand, elephants, but on the other hand, communities. And I think another question, maybe I will tell you what we have done and what we're trying to do in order to support our rangers to be able to sort out all these issues. There are lack of equipment for communication. And okay, I can make a start from there, and I think it's enough.
That's a list of pretty difficult challenges to be facing, from militia to equipment. Equipment seems to be easier to address than perhaps, to militia. But it makes me also think, you mentioned, the elephants and the community, talking about being, being between a rock and a hard place, being between the elephant and the communities, because you are basically wanting to, as a ranger, support both. That's your job or also desire. It is not an easy place to be. So therefore the question is, what could we do? So, how could we overcome these challenges? And I'm sure you have some ideas, and you and your colleagues have some ideas. So please do share.
Thanks for asking the second question. So in terms of militia groups, we have developed this idea to, first of all, to carry out investigation. We have the anti-poaching units, which is which has a job to investigate the modus operandi of all militia groups, and to know the head of these, the leaders, and to see if it's possible to negotiate with these guys so they can just live peacefully in the park. And that's the first approach. But the second approach is, if they resist, then our rangers have the possibility to request a support from the military, the government forces. And this is the second approach, but we don't prefer the second approach because once the military operate and they leave, some of the militia groups can return to the park and they will just make our rangers' work difficult. And so we have succeeded with the first approach, and we keep doing it for the remaining militia groups, because most of them, they prefer to hide within protected areas because we have a massive forest. And I think most of people know what the DRC has in terms of protected area and forest. So in terms of salary, I think the government is doing is trying to improve the situation, because they support all operational management plans, and now our rangers are having, I think, let's support in terms of salary. But they, beside that, they also get the support in terms of salary or prim from the government partners, who also provide some fees that cover rations for patrol, and the money that covers also, they provide medicine. So this helps rangers to focus on their work on the ground. Regarding the capacity building, we don't have at the moment enough funding that can cover the capacity building in terms of new technologies like GIS. There are not a lot of people, a lot of rangers who really know how to manage GIS products within our protected area. So we have just a few of them. And we think that with the support of the park's partners, we can be able to sort this issue out and help rangers also to develop their skills in the use of new technologies and improve their job. And in terms of equipment for communication, we don't have any solution for now, because we rely on the funding from donors. That's what I can say for now. Yeah.
Thanks, Claudel. What I'm hearing from you is a quite nice concrete list, in addition to what the previous panelists have already said, in terms of what it means when we talk about supporting rangers in more concrete terms. So everybody has mentioned those equipment needs. People have also mentioned the capacity building needs. What you mentioned, I think, for the first time hearing from you, was the salary needs, making sure that, these key workers, we've been talking about the salaries of the key workers in the health sector past year, I think, across the world, but also now, talking about, the salaries of the key workers as rangers, that, they should also have appropriate wage, giving the important role they do, but also in number of countries around the world, the really dangerous role that they also serve as well. And I think in the past, I think it was Abby who mentioned also life insurance and things like that, to actually proper support framework, which is a policy issue, and therefore should be supported by the government side, as you said as well. Thanks for that. I think maybe I can ask you a bonus question, that since there's time, and and I think you might have an idea for that. If you would have, you mentioned funders, and obviously, of course, that's also the second panel is also around, the support framework from the global level. What would you have one message to the funders of projects of the future, that what you would say that, based on your experience of the past, that you would then hope that the future funding programs that will be certainly come to be in your park, they should take into consideration, which they perhaps haven't done so well in the past? A recommendation.
Okay, my recommendation in terms of funding, I will suggest that since the park managers have signed the contract with donors, I would suggest them for a certain amount of, I think, a number of days. If it's a contract for 1 year funding, I will suggest donors to just give that money at once, because when donors, they provide support like for, they have a contract for 1 month, for 1 year, but they provide money for 6 months or less than that, we always have difficulty, because at the end of 6 months, before we get the second amount of money, donors request the audits, and the audit takes a lot of time, and during that time, rangers suffer a lot. So I would really request, suggest, not really request, but I would suggest that.
That makes sense. Anyway, it's not entirely different from from around the world. So what you talk about is the administrative burden, and basically, on the smaller players, and also how that administrative burden, which is there for a reason, obviously, because different accountability reasons, but how that then translates into the final receiver, i.e. the ranger, having to wait and suffer, perhaps, also, as a consequence, which shouldn't be the case. So that is clear and concrete suggestion for improvement, something to look into, which we are after here, because we really want to make this more concrete as to how we make these things better and how we make these systems to work better. So fantastic. Thanks a lot, Claudel, for that, and also sharing your insights as well.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah.
Super. Now, as a roundup for the first round table, we're going to do something slightly different. So our final panelist should have been and would have been Joseph Tambwe Musimbi, also from the DR Congo. But sadly, Joseph can't be with us today, but he's provided us a presentation, which I'll try my best to give some insights from Joseph's perspective from a slightly different region from DR Congo. So Elena, if you would be so kind and to start Joseph's presentation. So basically, the reason why Joseph can't be here today is because he's having some ongoing issues with both travel within the region and the country, and also some internet connection issues linked to the recently volcanic eruption in his region. So when we were planning for this event, we agreed that given the situation that Joseph is currently in, I'll try to help out, and also we'll try to use this as an experience to show concretely what kind of challenges rangers and people who work with rangers are experiencing in their daily lives, and how also we can perhaps, as a community, from the rangers to ranger support community on the ground to the policy support community like myself, try to come together and make sure that we have rangers' voices heard also internationally. So that's what I'll try to do, and I'll try to do Joseph's justice here as well with his presentation. So some further insights from Congo. So Joseph has spent his past years working at Tambwe Nature Reserve. It's located in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, and it's roughly on the same latitude as the Lake Tanganyika in the Great Lakes area, but on the Congolese side. And Tambwe area has remained long time very isolated because it was very difficult to access. So it also escaped the Belgian colonial influence because of that. It is, according to Joseph, one of the largest remaining continuous forest areas in the whole Great Lakes region in the Eastern Africa. It's a great hotspot for biodiversity. For example, it hosts habitats of eastern lowland gorillas, so important in that respect, but also hundreds of species of birds, a number of which are endemic of the area. And because of that, 2016, so 15 years ago, Tambwe Nature Reserve was established to conserve this particular biodiversity important area. And it faces pressures. Pressures include artisanal logging, hunting. It's also a very important area for mining and prospecting for mining, and also has some hydropower potential. So as you can imagine, as everywhere else around the world as well, there is a tension there between the nature conservation and also using the area for more broadly to support socioeconomic development. And one of the key issues for this area, according to Joseph, was that when the park was established, boundaries and management of the reserve was not as clearly defined as was helpful, which led to some different interpretations and potential conflicts as well in terms of where the boundaries of the park started and where they ended. So starting from year 2000, national authorities teamed up with international and national and local NGOs, including Joseph's local NGO, to establish a locally oriented governance system for the reserve. And this included establishing village communities for forest conservation, awareness raising and conservation code, awareness raising of the conservation code of the area, and reviewing the boundaries of the area and establishing those boundaries together with the people. And Elina, maybe you can go to the couple of the next slides. So here you can see photos of the community groups coming together to share their views and also get information about the project area, and also help in the end to set the boundaries for the area together as a community, as you can see in the bottom picture. And in addition to that, what has been happening over the past decade is training of community patrols and monitoring missions, and also supporting cooperation with rangers, which brings us to the topic of today's webinar. So Elina, if you can click the next slide, please. So based on Joseph and the lessons he's learned, he says that at the Tambwe area, there has never been any major conflicts between the national authority and the community. And that's because communities have really been brought together and brought around the same table and together with the authorities to establish in the end the project area and its boundaries. And the community's involvement in the mapping of the area, regular ecological monitoring, awareness raising of the regulations and good practice of the reserve, and also these community patrols have made it possible to have this good coexistence, but also support to the state rangers who are working in the area. And also it's helped to ensure that the natural resources are well managed in the area, and also in a way that it supports the local communities as well, particularly the local communities' needs for the non-timber forest products in the area. Next slide, please. So Joseph regards this particular experience as a really good practice when looking towards the future and what, in his view, DR Congo would need in the future. And what he highlights in his insights is that DR Congo has a lot of potential for building back better with nature. So he's saying that between the 2003 and 2021, number of project areas in the country has increased from 18 to 73, which is a really big increase. And it also, of course, means that there is a lot of work for the rangers and ranger community to work with local community and national authorities here. And Joseph has highlighted a recent new reserve, Janga Reserve. I hope that I pronounced it relatively correctly. And he's saying that this reserve, particularly where he's been working on, has been benefiting from engagement with rangers, and could also benefit more with engagement and capacity building and support with rangers, particularly in the COVID pandemic aftermath. Elina, can you click the next slide, please? So in the Ganja area, one of the newest project areas in the DR Congo, Joseph's local NGO has been supporting the rangers to work together with the communities to establish this project area. And you can see a photo to show this in practice on screen now. And the final slide, please. But then what Joseph really wanted to highlight at the end of his presentation as to what would be helpful for the rangers and also the people working together with rangers like his NGO is the support that is required now in the pandemic aftermath. So Joseph has noticed that rangers, as well as the communities that they work with, aren't currently as well informed about the pandemic as they should be. And he's also worried about the transmission perhaps between the humans and also the animal, and human-animal transmissions as well, which he highlights. And he's also saying that economically, the livelihoods have almost disappeared in the following prolonged confinement of the pandemic. So the areas as elsewhere in the world as well in these conditions, are definitely suffering. And he's highlighting that in the future, particularly in the near future, in the pandemic aftermath, supporting the rangers and communities in terms of awareness raising for the pandemic and how to reduce the spread of the virus, and support, provide materials and other means to protect themselves and also promote vaccination rates and get the vaccination to the areas of the country would be really important. So in addition to the support that has been highlighted by the previous speakers of the panelist, Joseph is adding to it with a very current pandemic context and saying that, his view and what he's seeing in the area he's working on, he really sees that support is required to stop the spread of the pandemic and help to build after in these communities to support both the conservation of these new areas, but also ensure that the people benefit from them. And rangers have an important information and PR role to play in that case as well. So just to add to the previous speakers, that was from Joseph, and hoping as well that, with this presentation, we also show that even if the connections are bad and even if it can't work out, we can try to do something to support the messages coming through cooperation from Africa to Europe, for example, in this case.